Welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today to hear some tips and tricks when using DevOps Center. Before we get started, I need to remind you once again to please make your purchasing and investment decisions based on currently generally available product. I want to thank you. I want to thank you for being here today with us here at TDX in this session, and I also want to thank you for being a Salesforce customer or prospective customer. You are what makes us have a product in a company, so we're sincerely grateful for you all being here today. My name's Karen Fidelik. I'm on our product management team, on our developer services product management team. I'm joined here today by Kyle and Fran, who are developers on our DevOps Center product. So when any of you have any issues with the product, you're going to talk to them. Okay. All right. What we're going to be talking about today, I'm going to do a quick intro on kind of an overview of what DevOps Center is, what it's about. I'm going to go through some fundamentals that lead into some best practices around pipeline management, which is then going to lead into some topics around managing dependencies, some best practices to give you the best success when using DevOps Center. And then we're going to look at how do we extend it to provide additional capabilities beyond what we get out of the box. And then we'll look at some next steps. So let me get a show of hands here. How many folks in this audience are using DevOps Center today? How many have tried using DevOps Center, maybe aren't using it today? Okay, and how many have never touched it but are just interested to learn more? Awesome, okay, so we got a little bit of everything, which is what I expected. DevOps Center we released a little bit over a year ago. It is currently generally available. This is an application to help all developers manage change and release throughout an application lifecycle management process using modern tooling and modern industry best standards when it comes to software development. We're going to help you manage your changes through a lifecycle pipeline in an underlying source control repository. So one of the key premises of DevOps Center is that everybody can take advantage of an industry best practice of using source control. We have a seamless integration that we've built with GitHub. We're working on other source control providers as well. This allows everybody to be able to take advantage of that best practice and the power of a source control system, even if you're not familiar with using one before. We allow you to move those changes through a lifecycle using simple clicks. And it's not just about clicks. While DevOps Center is a click-based interface, it is fully compatible with our programmatic SFDX tooling. So this means that you can have folks using our CLI, our IDEs, using GitHub directly. They can work seamlessly alongside folks who are using clicks with DevOps Center. This is what we call our hybrid teams. All right, so now I'm going to talk a little bit about some key fundamentals and best practices when it comes to using DevOps Center. So first I'm going to talk about work items. Work items are how we manage the requirements and the changes throughout the lifecycle. You can think of a work item like a ticket or a user story. It's basically that way that we capture requirements and manage the change. Now when we're making changes within Salesforce, when we're doing development, how is that change actually managed? It's managed as metadata, right? XML source. The source in a Salesforce project is metadata. That metadata is going to be moved through the lifecycle as part of a work item. So we're not just managing individual metadata files, we're managing them as part of a work item, as part of that requirement. We're tracking those changes as you're making them in a sandbox, and we're managing those in an underlying feature branch in the source control system. So again, we're going to help automate this, keep that source all managed outside of the org. Pipeline. The pipeline is how we move that work through the whole application lifecycle management process, from development to testing into production. We have a couple views in DevOps Center that let you visualize and configure and set up this pipeline. It's also where we manage and execute the migration or the promotion of the work through these various stages. So what does this actually look like in DevOps Center underneath the hood? What we've got here is a visualization of our pipeline. A pipeline is, again, these stages that go from development through testing into production. Key premise here, we do not want to be making changes directly in production, and that's why we set up these additional environments. We have development stages, or development orgs, where we're doing the development, making those changes. We recommend that every developer has their own development environment. Keep those changes separate. But then they're going to come together in one or more test stages. What we are showing here are 3 test stages: integration, UAT, and staging. These are different types of sandboxes, and you can configure any number of these stages and any type of sandbox that you want to use for each one of these stages before we finally go into production. This is what we call our pipeline stages. Now, a pipeline stage in DevOps Center corresponds not only to an org, but also to an underlying branch in the source control repository. So again, I mentioned that the key premise here is that we are managing the source outside of the org. So we're going to do that by having a branch that corresponds to each stage's org. There's going to be an org and a branch that correspond with each stage. DevOps Center's mission in life is to keep these stages, branches, and orgs in sync with each other at all times. And the way that it's going to do this is orchestrate this movement of the metadata source in and out of these orgs, between the org and the branches in the source control repository. And what does this actually look like? This is a high-level view, but let's take a closer look here. So in DevOps Center, when we're working on a work item, we have these two kind of key operations. One is called pull changes, and one is called commit changes. And what we're doing there is when you pull changes, we're retrieving that metadata out of the development sandboxes, and we're committing and pushing that into the underlying feature branches for each work item. We have a feature branch specific to every work item, and that's how we're going to keep the work isolated and separate while it's going through development. Now, when the development is complete, we're going to move that into our next stage. That would be, in this case, our integration stage. And how do we move the metadata into a target environment or stage? We do that using deployments, right? You probably think about moving metadata using deploy. How does this look in DevOps Center? In DevOps Center, we have a button that allows you to migrate this metadata, this work. It's called promote. We call it promotion in DevOps Center. You can click your work, and then you can click promote, and it's going to migrate that work. Now, you may be thinking, why is this not called deployment? It's not called deployment because it's doing more than just deployment. Remember, we've got this underlying source control system that we are trying to keep in sync at all times with the corresponding orgs. So what DevOps Center is doing when you do a promotion, which is represented by these stars here, is it is doing two things. It is merging the branch from our source branch to our target branch. In that source control repository, GitHub is doing that merge, and then DevOps Center is then deploying from that branch into the target org. So this is all happening underneath the scenes. We're orchestrating all of this for you. So this is kind of a high-level view of what's happening with the underlying source control repository, how it relates to each of these pipeline environments. And this is important to just kind of have some general understanding of as we get into the subsequent topics here. So the next concept that I want to talk about is bundling, and specifically a bundling stage. So those of you who are using DevOps Center are familiar with this concept, right? When you set up your pipeline, you define one of your stages as the bundling stage. And this can be sort of a confusing and complex topic. It's a little bit hard to explain sometimes. But generally, how we describe this is the bundling stage is where all the work comes together. And from there forward, it moves together as a unit or a versioned bundle. You can see here in this integration stage, I have a series of work items with checkboxes next to them that I can individually select, pick and choose, and I can then promote into UAT. In UAT, however, you can see I don't have those checkboxes anymore, okay? Those checkboxes are gone, and my only option is to deploy or promote this entire set, this entire bundle into the next stage. Now, why is this? So a lot of people think that the reason we introduced bundling was to allow you to create these nice bundles. I can create these logically related sets of work. I can create maybe a release. I can have these versions on them. And that's all well and good, and that's cool. And yes, absolutely, you can do that. But that is, in fact, not why we introduced bundling. We introduced bundling as a compromise. It is a compromise between what we consider to be industry best practice around software development and what we've trained our Salesforce developers to do over the years, which is not considered industry best standard when we're using things like change sets and metadata API that don't correspond with an underlying source of truth in a source control repository like GitHub, any Git-based system. And so essentially, we've trained you to have bad habits, and this is why we had to introduce this concept of bundling. Okay, so now I'm gonna tell you a little bit more about what's happening underneath the hood and why this is sort of a trade-off that we're making. This view here is showing us what we would consider to be that industry best practice. In this case, we have integration as our bundling stage. This is our first stage of our pipeline where all the work is coming together. You can see I've got this work item 1 and 2. I've got feature branches for those that are being merged into integration and deployed subsequently into that integration org. I'm then going to test my work in integration, make sure everything works together. Before then, we move to UAT. And when we move to UAT, that entire branch is being merged into the next stage org. So here I know that once I've verified all my work in integration, I know that I am moving that thing that I verified into the next stage. And I feel confident that the testing I did is now going to apply to that next stage. Similarly, when I go from UAT to staging, I know that everything I tested in UAT is now moving into staging when I'm ready. So we presented this basic concept to our users early on in our design process for DevOps Center as part of our user testing. And the first thing that a lot of people said was, well, wait a minute. What happens if I have some work in UAT that I'm not ready to promote into staging? How do I keep something back? How do I only promote part of the metadata there? And we're like, well, you don't do that. That's not what good software developers do. That's not what the normal process is. And they're like, well, yeah, but that's what we do. Like, that's what we do with change sets. That's what we do with metadata API. And we're like, okay, shoot. So like, we kind of have a problem here. And that is why we introduced bundling, is to try to like bridge this gap and provide you with an option there. However, we realized we had to do that to kind of meet our developers where they were. We still contend that it's not the best, greatest practice. And so let's look at sort of an example of why that may be. Now, if we look at this example where we have UAT stage as our bundling stage, it looks quite similar, but the difference is that now these feature branches are living longer. And you can see here that my work item 2 is able to be deployed or promoted into this bundling stage, separate from work item 1. So I've merged them both into integration, but now I've chosen to just promote work item 2. Okay, that's fine. But if we think about what's happening here, if you could imagine between work item 1 and work item 2, maybe there's a piece of metadata that is the same, that is shared. We've got 2 different versions of the same metadata component that are being merged when they go into integration into one merged version of that metadata component. That's what GitHub does. It merges those XML files. You are testing in integration that merged version of that XML. You're verifying the functionality there. It has the functionality both of work item 1 and 2, and you're testing that as a merged version. Now, when you now promote work item 2 into UAT, you are now testing a different version of that metadata. Maybe sort of functionally the same, maybe it's going to perform exactly the same, but there may be interdependencies that are now creating different behavior. So the bottom line is, what you tested in integration is not what you just moved to UAT. And this is a fundamental problem here. You're not guaranteed that the work that you did to verify is now reflected in the stage that you're moving it to. Now, these Git-based systems like GitHub, they are built upon a premise that everyone's doing the right thing, the best practice. And they have been optimized to assume that work is moving through in order, and it's moving through together, as I talked about earlier, the whole branch. And so the more that we try to maintain a model that's counter to that, the more complexities are going to arise. We are now going to have more conflicts, more dependency issues as we try to keep these feature branches longer and basically not necessarily honor the ordering that they've been coming into the source control system. And so the moral of the story here is, the further left in your pipeline you can have this bundling stage, the greater degree of success you're going to have with promotion. The number one thing that we hear support cases about is promotion problems related to people having conflicts and dependency issues because they're trying to maintain this bundling stage way far to the right. They're trying to have all this flexibility. We understand the need for flexibility. It is why we built the product this way. But I'm telling you that if you can start trying to move that bundling stage left, and when you're setting up new pipelines for all you new people, try to get that bundling stage shifted left, you're going to have greater success. Fran's going to talk a little bit in just a minute about how we have built some capabilities to help you, even if you're trying to move this bundling stage right, because we understand that that's important to you. But I'm telling you, the cleanest way is to move it left. Okay. Final feature here I want to talk about is something called development environment synchronization. So I mentioned earlier that we recommend having a development environment per developer. This is to keep the work isolated and separate. One of the things we hear as a reason why people can't do this or have challenges with this is that it's hard to keep those development environments in sync with each other, in sync with the latest source of truth. And so DevOps Center, and so what they do is they put everybody in a shared sandbox. And then we've got problems of like people stomping on each other's work and keeping track of each other's changes. So DevOps Center has introduced a feature to help you with this process. In our pipeline view, we show you for every development environment how in sync that development environment is with the latest source of truth, in this case, our integration stage. You can see what's different about them, and through a simple click, you can synchronize your development environments with that latest source of truth. What we're doing in this case is then taking the source, that metadata in our integration stage branch, and just deploying it back to the development environments. This is going to help you keep everything in sync. So as you're doing new work, you are basing it on the latest, and your success rate is going to be a lot higher as you then move those work through the pipeline. So in summary, key principles here. We want to have one development environment per developer. We want to have at least one test stage between development and production. The further left in the pipeline that you have that bundling stage, the greater your chances are for success and the less conflicts and dependencies issues that you're going to be dealing with. And synchronize your development environments as often as you can. Before starting new work, you're again going to have greater success as you move through the promotion process. All right, with that, I'm going to hand it over to Fran to talk about dependency management.
Thank you, Karen. So I will be talking about how DevOps Center helps you handle dependencies while promoting through the pipeline. And for that, we had set up a demo. In this demo, Kyle, Karen, and I are working on the Dreamhouse app, basically. And I right now open the Dreamhouse app in our production org. And
make it full screen. Make the whole thing full screen. Green. Yeah.
Sorry. And here you can see I'm on the Property Explorer tab. I want to focus on that today. And here we see all the properties listed. And on the left side, we have the Create Property flow, and I want to focus on that today. So each of these properties have a type that you can see over here. This identifies if it's apartment, single type, duplex. And Kyle was working last week on adding this new type field to the property object. But now our PM, Karen, wants to add this type to the screen flow over here so that we can, when we add a property, we can specify its type. So let's see how DevOps Center helps us to accomplish this. For this, I'm going back to DevOps Center. This is the first screen that you will see when opening DevOps Center. I will select the project that we are working on, and I will go to the pipeline view where we can see all the different stages that are part of our pipeline. Especially, I want to see the Environments tab, where for you to be able to see the different, how we set up our pipeline, we have 3 stages, UAT, staging, and production. Each of these have a Salesforce org, as Karen mentioned, and also a GitHub branch. On this tab, we can also see the 2 development environments we have right now. One is Kyle's environment, another is mine. The first one is Fran mine. So I wanted to focus on this green indicator over here. It's saying that my environment is already in sync with UAT. So I did this before coming here because I wanted the field that Kyle created last week to be part of my environment so I can build on top of that. Going to the work item list view, we can see that I have already a work item assigned to me that is to add this type to the create property flow. A couple of hours ago, I started working on this, so I will show you on my dev sandbox how the changes I did look like. So now I'm on the Property Explorer, but now on my sandbox, not on the production org. As you can see over here, I added the property type on the screen flow. And let's see how DevOps Center helps us retrieve this source and put it into our work item that we just created. The work item is already connected with my sandbox, and it's indicating that there is something to pull from our sandbox. There are some changes there. So I'll go on and pull changes from my sandbox, and DevOps Center is going to use the sort tracking capabilities of my sandbox to show me what I changed since I last did this pull. This is the only thing that I changed, so I will just add a comment, a commit comment basically, and I will proceed with the commit changes. What the commit changes are going to retrieve the metadata, the source of the metadata I just selected from my dev sandbox, and commit that into my feature branch that was created by DevOps Center when I connected this work item to my sandbox. These are applied as deltas, meaning these are changes on top of the previous state of the file. Each work item has a separate feature branch, as Karen mentioned, because that way we isolate the work from other developers. Now, the next step is to create a review. This is a change request to merge my feature branch into the next stage branch, in this case, UAT branch. Let's see how this PR looks like in GitHub. So here we can see that the PR I have just made has just one commit. This is the only commit I did right now. And let's look at how the files difference look like in here. So as you can see, the deltas are applied on top of the original file. This is important. We're not committing the whole file, it's just the differences from the previous state of the file. So let's say we're good with this. So we will mark this work item as ready to be promoted. And what this will do is to add it to the pipeline stages tab. Here on the approved column, this means that the work item is ready to be moved throughout the pipeline. Let's go ahead and promote the work item to the next stage, UAT. This will prompt with some options, but we will go default. This is about the tests we want to run, if we want to do a partial or full deploy, but just go default. The promotion process, as Karen mentioned, consists of two phases: the merge of the feature branch and the deployment into the next stage environment, in this case, UAT. UAT is the stage that we use for QA. Usually Karen verifies if the work is correct. So I'll go to the UAT environment. Before reloading, you can see that there is no type here, but if I reload now, after the promotion is successful, you see that the property is type is here. So voila, DevOps Center moved our metadata from our work item to our next environment. What do you think, Karen?
Let me see. So let me verify this for you. Actually, shoot. I wanted that property type to be up. Can we put that under the property name?
Okay.
That's where I really wanted it. And can the default be apartment instead of single family? Because that's really what we have
yeah,
for. Okay. So can you make that change for me?
Yeah, okay.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so Karen wants me to change something. So let's see. Let's go back to the DevOps Center and see here to the pipeline view. So I have to fix UAT, but we don't want to make the change directly on the UAT environment because that won't be a good practice because that change won't be part of our source tracking system. So the good practice is to tell us to create a new work item and move it from the left to right. So I will go to the work item list view again, and I've already had a work item created. I knew Karen was going to find something. She always does on my work. So I will connect it to my dev sandbox again, and well, while this is happening, I will go, so this is the create property flow on my dev sandbox. So I will go to the new property step, and basically I'm going to change the position of the type, and I will add the default value here to be apartment, and I'll save the flow and activate it. So as a recap, Karen found something in UAT, and I'm creating a new work item that is going to be built on top of the previous work item, basically the changes that I did previously. And I will move the work item to UAT so that Karen can verify the new change. So this is the same process as we did before. It's pull the changes, commit a commit message, commit the changes, create a review, all the same stuff I did before. Then Kyle is going to explain about what are things we can do on the review step, but for now, we're just going to create the review and set it as ready to be promoted. So back on the pipeline view, now the fixed work item is placed on the approved column. Now I can go ahead and promote it to UAT so that we have the new changes on that environment as well. Again, what this is happening is retrieving, it's merging the branch and pushing the source into the UAT sandbox. So once that process is done, if I reload this page, here, now you can see that I moved the type, the position, and the apartment. What do you think?
You can keep your job now. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. So let's see. Now we have two work items on UAT. We want to move this forward up until production at some point. So I definitely want to move the fix, not the previous work item that has a bug. But there are three things that could happen here. If I just promote the fix, if it's completely dependent on the other work item, the promotion will fail, either because of the branch or a deployment issue. The second thing that could happen is that the promotion works, but the functionality on staging is not the same as UAT. And the third scenario is, okay, the fix works, the promotion is successful, staging has the same functionality, but we would leave work item 26 here on UAT, and we don't want that. So let's see how DevOps Center helps us to handle this situation. I'll just try to promote work item 27 into staging. This is just the fix. So what's happening here? DevOps Center is telling me that there are some shared components detected between two work items on the stage. This is because it analyzes the metadata components they modify, and it's telling us probably you want to treat this as a single unit because it's touching the same components. I'll go ahead and combine these two work items while I explain what's happening. So this procedure is going to concatenate the two feature branches of 26 and 27, consolidating them into just one. This way, when we move this unique, let's say, the resulting work item forward, it's moved just as a unit, and it's not going to cause our dependency issues in the future. I'll go ahead and promote these and to staging. But while this is happening, I wanted to talk about some key takeaways and tips about what we just saw. So first, always move work is moved from left to right. The second one is the size of the work item should be something you think about. I mean, we don't want work items that are massive and are touching a lot of metadata components, because then we will have lots of dependencies. A way to know if you're doing this okay is if you have a work item and part of it you want to move it forward, but part of it you don't, probably you need to split that work item up. The third is like try to use this feature, and obviously if it sounds logical, but it's try to use it because it will help you with dependencies. And the fourth is, as you saw, Karen detected this issue on an earlier testing stage, and that helps us fix it quickly. So it's important to have these testing stages. So now if we go to stage, as you see now there is no type, but if I reload the page after the promotion, and the demo gods help, the property type is now here. So thank you very much, and I will pass it over to Kyle now.
All right. Thank you, Fran. My name is Kyle, and I'm going to be talking to you about customizing the DevOps Center and extending its capabilities. So the most important thing to keep in mind for extending the DevOps Center is that it's a second-gen managed package that's installed into your org, just like any other managed package from AppExchange. This means that it's custom logic, which is Apex, and most importantly, custom objects. Those custom objects are, what you guys are already very familiar with extending in the native Salesforce platform. So the way that those custom objects are all related, we've fully documented for you with our DevOps Center data model. So I promise this just looks much more intimidating than it really is. But this is a visual description of our data model and how it's all related to each other. So this is what we'll be extending. So here's a QR code for quick reference if you would want to go to that documentation, but it is available online, the quick Google search away. So some great ways to extend this data model that we've seen customers do even before we published the documentation was some really cool custom reports and dashboards that were able to measure the developer adoption rates of using DevOps Center, as well as measuring the work item throughput and sort of the life cycle of that work item moving through the pipeline. Some other really cool ways to extend that are writing Apex triggers to notify Slack when a promotion is complete, both the deployment and that merge. And we've also seen some customers roll their own Jira integrations, pulling those work tracking system tickets and then using data loader to map those to work items. So a sort of direct connection between mapping your work to work items, which is those dev changes being done. So some of the most robust extension capabilities available today are with GitHub. So with GitHub, namely those features are GitHub Actions. And GitHub Actions are a way to invoke custom logic based on something that happens within the repository. So this can be something like opening a PR, closing a PR, making a commit, creating or deleting branches. So DevOps Center can hook directly into this with GitHub and to initiate a GitHub action. One really cool way, even in DevOps Center, the way that we use GitHub Actions is every time someone makes a commit into our team's repository, we create a scratch org, we push our entire code repo, and then run all of our Apex tests to make sure that we haven't broken anything for each other. There's a bit of coding involved in this, and setting up GitHub Actions involves a YAML file, which stands for yet another markup language. We'll go a bit more into that in just a minute, but it's a really powerful way to utilize that capability. The other is GitHub branch protection. So these branch protection rules are sort of what will determine whether or not you can merge into a branch. So as a quality gate, you can decide if I don't have a pull request reviewer, if I don't have a valid run of my Apex tests, if I don't have a proper code scan tool that is run, I can protect certain branches and give them elevated privileges above what a normal feature branch would have. And so this enables you to add those quality gates to ensure that the commits that you make reach a certain threshold before moving forward in your pipeline. So I'd like to show you what that looks like. In just one more second. So stay with me for just a moment, but most bugs that are introduced are typically introduced at the build phase, right? So by finding those bugs earlier in the phase, by sort of shifting that left using those quality gates, things like unit tests, code reviews, code scan tools, you can find those bugs earlier when they're cheaper to fix versus finding them later where it's more expensive because it takes so much more extra time to debug and then move those changes all the way to where you found that bug later in the pipeline. So shifting left, every time you find the bug earlier, the cheaper and better it is for you. So one of the best ways to do this is with Code Analyzer. So Code Analyzer is a leading Salesforce tool that with over 200 rules that's able to scan your code, and it makes sure that as developers we write better, more secure, and performant code. And so using this is a really powerful way, and right now it's available as a CLI plugin, as an extension in VS Code and Code Builder, and most importantly, you can use it with GitHub Actions, and I'd like to show you what that looks like with a quick demo here. So, I've been working on this work item right here, and I've been making some commits to my feature branch, right? So the changes here, I've been working on work item 17, and I've been doing some fairly simple stuff, just adding a new method to one of my Apex test classes. I can see in the activity history, my Apex class here, test class A, is the only thing that I've done. And I think I'm done developing. I want to start this promotion process, so I'm going to create a review, just like Fran earlier. So I've made this review, and I can see that my promotion is blocked. What's going on here? I can click on the promotion blocked icon and see that the DevOps Center is telling me that the source control system has a rule or process that's blocking something. So this is GitHub reaching out to DevOps Center and saying, hold on just a second, we need to see what's going on. So I'm going to click on change request here to get some more details. So this is my PR that I've just written, and I can see, all right, it looks like I have something running here, and I'm being blocked from merging. So what's at play here was what I was just talking about, right? So we have a branch protection rule, which is blocking me from merging until this specific check has passed. And this is my Salesforce Code Analyzer workflow. So let's take a look at that GitHub action workflow. and see what's going on here. So this workflow is, as it's saying, setting up a job, checking out some files, installing the CLI, the plugin, running that code analyzer, all automatically. And all I had to do was from DevOps Center, open that PR. So where did this come from, right? I did not actually have to specifically write this. Fortunately for us, in the GitHub Actions Marketplace, you can get to, here we are. This is the example YAML file that I pulled directly from our marketplace page. So almost a one-to-one copy, drag and drop. You guys can start using Code Analyzer with GitHub Actions immediately after this session. So it's really cool stuff. So let's take a look and see what was going on with that action. I saw some red, which is always a good thing, right? So here it looks like it failed. And if I want to go back to my PR here, I can see that my check has failed. And again, my branch protection rule has said that I have to be able to pass this check in order to merge. So if I go back into the details here, I can see exactly what's going on in my summary. So my change, it found some violations. And specifically for us, in test class A, which was the class that I'd modified, it says that the method name that I'd added, called method1, doesn't match this regular expression. Now, I'm not going to expect you to interpret that, but basically what this is saying is that that underscore has got to go. So I'm going to go back and fix that directly in GitHub. So I'm going to go to my files changed, and I'm going to see this is exactly the offending method. So I'm going to edit that. And we should be good to go. All right. Now what's really cool is that GitHub will automatically keep track of that and reinitiate that GitHub action workflow. So now this is starting again freshly with that new commit that we just made. And that's what we can see running here. So while that's happening, I can recap really quick. Back here. Oh, sorry about that. So what we saw was that from DevOps Center, we were able to initiate that GitHub action run. And that QR code right there is where you can get that code analyzer action. We're able to initiate that, and that was able to control DevOps Center to block that promotion from happening before we reached that quality gates threshold. And that worked with the branch protection rules, right? So determining whether or not if that pull request was mergeable was what determined if we could promote or not promote. So I'm going to take a look since that should be done now. Oops, jumped the gun there a little bit. And there we go, our checks have passed. So fixing that code has now made Code Analyzer say, all right, your code looks good, and this PR is now mergeable. So coming back into DevOps Center, if I refresh my work item, we're going to reach out to GitHub, and we're going to see that now my PR or my work item is unblocked. So I'm going to say that this is ready to promote, and we're good to go. All right, so we went through that. As great as all of this is, there is some more work for us to do in the extensibility world. We got some really cool APIs coming up to initiate promotions or to synchronize DevOps Center on demand with whatever VCS system is connected. In this case, it's going to be GitHub. We also have SPIs, which stands for Service Provider Interface, which will empower you guys to write Apex code within DevOps Center Apex code. And that's going to be really, really exciting. So we're looking forward to that coming up. And then lastly, we're moving from what we like to call the Omni app, which is our standalone DevOps Center application, into native Lightning pages. And this will further empower you to be able to extend and write your own sort of capabilities that can hook directly into the DevOps Center. So this includes, again, more custom fields, reports, and layouts, all stuff that you can write for DevOps Center. So with that, I'm going to hand it back to Karen to talk about our next steps.
Wrap us up. All right, thanks, guys. What's coming next with DevOps Center? We have our roadmap published publicly. We keep it on GitHub. Take a picture of this QR code here. You can get out there onto our roadmap, see what we've got coming, see what we've recently delivered, and most importantly, give us feedback on it. So you can provide feedback. You can vote up any items that we have on our roadmap, tell us what your use cases are, and this absolutely helps influence what our plans are. If you want to learn more about how to get started with DevOps Center, this is a pointer to a trail mix that has our documentation, how to get started, pointer to our Trailblazer community group where we're engaging with the community and where we have additional links to other resources. I think our roadmap is linked up here, a Trailhead module. So get out here and you can get started today. With that, I want to say thank you again for coming. Really appreciate y'all being here. And I know that $5 at Starbucks does not even get you a latte, but we are giving out $5 Starbucks gift cards if you fill out our survey, so we really appreciate that feedback. Thanks.